Same here, same here, same here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Driveline Academy podcast. What are the things that I say? It's the most dangerous youth baseball podcast. I'm your host, Devin Morgan, Director of Youth Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. I'm joined, as per usual, by my brother and my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy Assistant Director, Driveline Academy International Man of Mystery, Jeremy Texiel. The Sudafed kid is laying down for a bit. No more Sudafed for me. I'm just going to deal with this congestion because, like, popping Sudafeds every day, like, I'm just not on that vibe.
Tolerance is wearing off.
Yeah, that too. So I've just got, like, the latent, like, I still can't hear anything out of my right ear, so I feel like I'm getting a peek into my my future senile stage of development, so that's great. So if you hear me shouting into the mic, you can just blame that. As per usual, housekeeping, we'll start with axbat.com. Code D as in, I don't know, man, drop, L as in leg, DL, drop the leg. Oh, man, that's like a Hulk Hogan thing, and Hulk Hogan's like a bad guy now. D as in descent, L as in logical. Descent, logical, 2-0 will get you 20% off, because that's another thing that Hulk Hogan could do. He could logically dissent with anything that's going on in a country and not be an idiot. So descent logically 2-0 will get you all that stuff that you want at axbat.com. Disclaimer, it's all Black Friday and Cyber Monday'd out, so it's possible that they might have turned off the discount code for some specific thing that they're already running promo stuff on. So if that happens, please don't yell at me, or like you can. I mean, it's a free country. You can dissent logically, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to triage that specific issue.
I mean, it seems like if they're dissenting on that, that's not so logical.
For sure, because if
there's nothing you can do.
Right? Yeah, I mean, if our discount code doesn't work, it probably means you're getting it cheaper than our discount code would afford. So Correct. You can go support our buddies over at Axbat, and if you use the code, just know that stuff goes directly into our scholarship pool. For kids to be able to do this thing for cheaper than they otherwise would be, as I fight with this mic, and we're going to see if it's going to stay where I want it to for the next however so long.
That was weird.
Yeah. Let's just get into it.
We got, I'll throw out Black Friday at Driveline as well. We started our sales today, so drivelinebaseball.com.
Yeah, Black Friday, Cyber Monday stuff is pretty big for us. The book is 20% off, and it's the biggest discount we've done off of the book since we launched. I did a video for it this morning on my social. It's everything I got for you over 14 years coaching youth baseball in one form or another, and almost 7 of those being at Driveline. So if you want to get that type of experience front-loaded for you and not have to suffer through it the way that all of us typically do suffer when we're young coaches, you can get the book. In addition to being a fairly massive tome, you were also getting all the online resources that come with it as well. If I can recall, the yearly training plan, our micro training plans, our macro training plans, all of our velocity development, bat speed development, bat to ball skill focus, all those training plans are in there. If you remember the Skills at Scale practice book, all those practice games are in there. And you also get the library of hitting and throwing drill videos that I shot with my son, coached him live. So it's just like all the resource I can give you for, I think, in total, what is a relatively affordable sum when you consider everything you get with it. It's certainly going to be, it's cheaper than like a lesson and a half for most markets. It's half the price of a new bat that you're going to end up buying. And when you can develop bat speed, I just did a bunch of ad reads for stuff that'll be launching for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. The hook that I used was, what's the thing that all youth baseball players need? And what's the thing that never gets returned to the store? It's bat speed.
I like that.
And look, if you're a player who's 12 and under and you're playing some amount of baseball that requires you to swing like a USA bat, right? Hey, those bats are dead. You could buy the $300 USA bat. You could buy the $75 USA bat. And the performance in terms of literal like trampoline effect off the barrel, it's going to be the same because that's the way that standard works. And if that's true, then the greatest leverage you could give your youth baseball player is not in the form of a $300 bat versus a $100 bat. It's in the form of bat speed. It's a thing you can develop. If you want the plans for it, we got that. I'm so glad that you reminded me of this because we also have the Youth Underload Smash bat and Youth Power bat are on sale for the first time ever. Like literally those things haven't been on sale because we sold them at a very aggressive price point to start with because we wanted to get a whole bunch of them out there. You guys have responded. We've sold more bats in like 10 months than we have in the previous 4 years combined. So if you want more of that stuff and you want it on sale at a cheaper price than it's ever been, drivelinebaseball.com, go take a look at that. And I don't want to like fear monger, but I will say that it's possible that the prices on those bats are going to have to go up. And part of that is going to have to do with some of the political stuff that's in the ether and some potential tariff stuff that we might have to deal with. And trust me when I tell you, we are selling them for darn near as cheap as we can be right now. So if that landscape changes, it is possible that the price is going to have to go up. If that's a thing that happens, man, I will try to do something to try to like increase the value. Like, I don't know if we'll do more video content that kind of comes with the bats. Like, that's an easy thing for me to do and make it more valuable for you guys. You get access to the hitting drills that are up on our YouTube when you buy the bats anyways. So yeah, Youth Underload Smash, Youth Power Bat are both on sale. Our player dev kits, our team dev kits, the Skills at Scale book, like the whole kit and caboodle is on sale this week. I don't know, maybe we'll push this podcast out earlier to get that message out to you guys before you're tucking into your post Thanksgiving Day shopping. We had a Caleb Williams sighting this weekend.
We did.
I know that the game didn't go the way you want.
So, you know, inside baseball, my team practices from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock on Sundays. So I generally miss either the whole game or like the end of the game. And like generally, well, in the beginning of the season, I'll record the games and try not to learn anything about it, then watch it when I get home. Inevitably, when we are mediocre at best, I wind up just watching highlights, and I don't need to watch the full game and like go back and go home and watch the full game. But last night I did because I have Sunday tickets, so I went back and watched the last like 6 minutes in overtime, and got like really excited, even though I knew it was going to happen, and then got really upset, even though I knew it was going to happen. So, you know, but he did look good. Development. Not linear.
That's right. This is much like me trying to will Lewis Hamilton to go from P10 to P1 in the Las Vegas Grand Prix this weekend. Ended up P2. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Well, it's one of those things, and you know, for those of you who either coach younger ages or have children of their younger ages and they haven't quite gotten to freshman, sophomore in high school, miserable trash talkers. That age.
Yeah, they just don't
the
have
worst,
that. Yeah,
right.
It's a skill issue.
It's a skill issue, but like that doesn't stop them from attempting to do it. So like you got to hear. I had to hear for the last 3 months how we made a mistake picking Caleb Williams over, you know, Jaden Daniels or whoever it was. Yep. And I kept saying development's not linear. That we got a long way to go in their careers. Jaden Daniels is like 2.5 years older than Caleb. Like we got a long way to go in their careers.
Yep.
And I'm just saying, a lot of those people that were clickbaiting online have been relatively quiet.
Yeah.
As the Commanders have fallen back to this planet.
Yeah. I mean, and look, Caleb Williams is going to be good. Like he just needs some tools around him. Like the kid's going to be good.
Yeah. I mean, wash the laundry, change the jerseys, something. They're like, just get that stink off of him, and we'll be all right.
Bring in Joe.
Here's my plea, and I'm a big development linear guy. I don't like to blame coaches. I will personally blame, I can't remember his name because it's not important enough for me to remember, but our offensive line coach. Guy's had this job for 4 years now. And we have not been good for one game out of that 4 year span. Yeah. I would love to be that bad at my job and still be able to keep it. So like we should fire that guy for sure.
Yeah, there's something going on there. So I told Jeremy I was driving in this morning and I was trying to rack my brain of all the things that have taken place in the last week or so. And I was like, I got about nothing for today's
That's why we started
episode.
with Caleb Williams talk.
Yeah, so we're starting with Caleb Williams. I got absolutely nothing, but fortunately, you guys have stuff for me. So I put the call out to both on the Driveline Plus and then also on my socials, just like, hey, what do you guys got? And we got a fair amount of questions to kind of get through, so we'll try to move quickly. We're going to start with our folks that are members of Driveline Plus because it's a privilege.
This is what membership gets you.
Yeah, that's right. You get a little, you get to the hotspot into the line here. I literally was watching Shrinking last night with Michelle, and there's the episode where he comes up to the food truck, and he's just like, "Yeah, I get to cut the line. I'm the investor, so you guys."
It's my favorite character.
Yeah, exactly. So Ben Rudman, good question here. Risk reward analysis and data on younger players ages 8 through 9 using weighted balls for velo development or weighted bats for bat speed development, and number 3, whether you would view those two topics differently. So in terms of data, I can tell you that that's something that we are working on. I have an existing R&D request with the team to do a better job of kind of leveraging this longitudinal data set that we're starting to develop with kids. I literally was looking back, and between our year 1 and year 2 rosters, we've somewhere around like 35 of those kids are left. We still have.
It's probably something. Sounds about right.
Yeah, it's about that. And with those kids, you're talking about a crop of, let's see, I mean, they're mostly that 12 and 13 group. Like, it's a lot of the 12s from year 1 and the 13s from year 2.
Yes, I thought you were saying right now. I was like, no, but yes.
Yeah. That have now aged in. So now we've had them from, 12U into 16U and 18U.
Yeah, the two biggest groups I would say are like the 11 and 12s from year 1 that we had that are now 15, 16.
Yeah. So we've got a decent chunk of those kids. So unfortunately, part of the answer here is just like we haven't done enough with the historical data that we're accumulating, and that's on us to kind of solve that and paint that picture. I mean, you and I have talked a lot lately about starting to tell these stories specific for our teams about like the leverage you gain from having this integrated approach from team play and training over time, because we're starting to see it in the mocap retests.
Yeah, and we talked about it with Noah, right?
Yeah.
Of like 70 innings over 2 years.
Yeah. So in terms of the data, hey, I should be able to have a really clear answer for you there. I don't have that yet. You can look. There's an older Driveline blog on our aging curves from year 1, but that was a really small sample size. I mean, it's decently informative if you want to kind of like start thinking about that topic. The sample size is comparatively small, though, and I think that's just important to acknowledge. In terms of the risk reward analysis, I think the thing I'll start with is in terms of risk, because I don't know what the risk is.
Okay, I got you there. So to me, there's clearly 2 risks here. One, the giant elephant that's sitting in the corner of the room is the injury risk.
Sure.
That like you imagine comes with throwing heavy objects or any kind of, I mean, just throwing anything at this point. The second one is, to me, the larger risk, and that is a confidence loss at that age risk.
How so?
And like that, this is going to get into like the last part of his question of like, do I view weighted ball training and weighted bat training differently? And like, absolutely I do.
Yeah.
And like, it is, to me, very important that the athlete, before starting either of those types of training, understands why they're doing it and understands the difference between training and games.
Yes.
Because if we're going to put weighted bats in their hands, they're going to struggle. And like, it's not going to be any fun. And now you're taking an 8 or a 9-year-old and making this not fun at all. So if they don't really understand the difference between the two or why they're doing this, and we're just like, I'm going to take my 8-year-old and try to make him better at baseball by sticking a weighted bat in his hands, I don't think you should do that. Like, I think the most important thing you could do at that age is just long-term athletic development and fostering a love of baseball.
Yeah.
And not necessarily getting into weighted bats, weighted balls if they're not mentally ready to approach baseball that way. Because it does introduce a significant amount of failure that, if they're not prepared for, can pretty quickly make them not enjoy that activity at that age.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm trying to think back. So to be really clear, right, at age 8 and under, I don't know that I'm in on structured training for anybody.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because there's so few 8-year-olds that actually will understand the difference between structured training and gameplay, and understand the purpose, how it differs and like take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
As opposed to like the vast majority of 8-year-olds who just want to have fun and like enjoy the thing. And I'm here to tell you that it's not always it's more of a grind than it is enjoyable a lot of times to do weighted ball training, weighted bat training. Even for older athletes, it can get monotonous and can become a grind.
Yeah.
So like doing it for an 8-year-old's, that would be honestly the biggest risk, I guess, is the one that I didn't say. But the third one of like, you're going to make this kid not love baseball at a young age by introducing that early.
Yeah, and like I think the intersection of those two things is really easy to understand. It's when the structure takes precedence over fun and engagement, that's when you land in that place. Right. And I think the younger that you get, the more sensitive you need to be 100%. To that configuration. And then there's also like, your kid better than we do.
Yep.
And
I have absolutely seen 7-8-year-olds who are ready to do weighted ball training and weighted bat training and get it. I have seen a lot more that don't.
Well, and that's, I was literally looking at like our year one rosters to try to like answer this question. And I saw a lot of kids because we had a 9U. We had a 9U that year one. And I think that team had some 8s and 1 7 on it.
Okay.
And going into this thing, my experience was colored by my own anecdotal experience, right? And when Danny started, he was about to turn 9, so he was still 8, and he bought in.
Outlier.
Like, he bought
for
in.
Sure.
I know, but the point that I'm making is like that was the experience that I had. So when we started teams, I was like, well, we can just design a system that like all these kids are going to be brought to that same point.
Yep.
It turns out it's not that easy.
Yep.
Right. It's not that easy. So I think you're right that like the risk here, I think there's two parts to the risk. There's the risk that again, like if you know that bat speed training or velocity training, which I would broadly say is just arm care for kids that age, if it's going to have any type of benefit, it needs to have some degree of consistency. And consistency lends itself towards structure. And some kids thrive in that environment, or at least they're not turned off by it. And some kids get the opposite approach, right? And I truly think that like this is the tough thing about making like a broad recommendation for something like this, because I would honestly say, sure, you can try it, but I would let your kid be in the driver's seat, like, and give them a taste of what that structure looks like in a way that's palatable. And if they rebel against it, I would be totally fine with like, just like regulating the thing down to just like, let's just take some swings, right? Let's just take some swings and have it be just that.
I think the injury piece is probably what most people view as like the risk reward.
Sure.
To touch on that, obviously, weighted bat training is going to be a lot less likely to cause an injury than weighted ball training.
Yeah, I mean, generally the only things that you're worried about with like bat speed training and just swinging period is when you over-index on the volume side. Right. You land in like the
if you're taking 200 swings a day with a game bat, you have a problem, let alone bat speed trainers.
Yeah.
So the throwing one is where people see like the risk for throwing weighted balls, and like if you do it with structure and follow the programs that you can find freely available through us, it is not really an injury risk. I say really because every time you throw is an injury risk. Every time you get in a car, you have an injury risk. Like there's going to be an injury risk, but it is, if you do it the right way, it's not actually an injury risk, or it doesn't increase the chances that your child will get injured. Yeah. In fact, from what we've seen, does the opposite. It actually like strengthens the kid's arm.
Correct.
And gets them to understand it and be a little bit more in tune with what their arm should feel like, what their arm shouldn't feel like, if they're ready to throw, when they're not ready to throw, those types of things, which I think is a really cool, valuable thing to introduce at a young age. But like to double down, it's just the structure piece of it. Like if your child is ready for that structure and to take it a little bit more seriously, there's not really an age where I would say like maybe 6, I guess. I don't know. Like introduce me to a 6-year-old who could take this seriously, and I'd probably be like, all right, fine, let him throw some weighted balls.
Yeah.
But like the problem is when you get a kid that's not going to take it seriously and picks up the heaviest ball that he's supposed to just be doing reverse throws with, and tries to like chuck it as far as he can and then says my elbow hurts, and it's like, yep. Yeah. The risk there isn't the weighted ball, it's the lack of willingness to follow the structure from the athlete. So your kid. Yeah. If you feel this is a thing that your kid can handle, go for it. If it's not, lean into the long-term athletic development.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think largely means game design, and this is going to get into Ben's second question here, largely in terms of game design that are going to cultivate good athletic movements and patterns, and some amount of autonomy about when they want to engage with that stuff. Mm-hmm. Like it's tough when you're like the baseball guy and your kid isn't quite there yet. I've seen a lot of dads who are like they're trying to force them to engage with the game, and I don't think engagement can really be forced. I think it's largely, but this just means that as a parent who doubles as their coach when they're that young, you kind of have to give the freedom and autonomy to like choose to engage with the thing when they want to engage it. Because if you force it, the odds you're going to get the outcome that you want are incredibly low.
I would fully agree with that. And I think a really good example is the way, and maybe you aside here, but the way, and like, because Danny is by exponentially older than any other Driveline children at this point, but like we now have kind of a toddler army of Driveline children that are going out there.
That's facts.
And like I think we will see, I mean, you can already see it from both our founder and our CEO of not forcing their kids into baseball.
Right.
If they don't want to do it, they don't have to do it. If they want to do it, I will let you make that decision, and I'm here in your corner. And like I think you can also look at it like a lot of Major League Baseball players and what they do with their children. Yeah. And like they don't force it, right? Like it seems sometimes like a lot of major leaguers force their kids to be in love with baseball because then they wind up playing professional baseball themselves, which is where you see, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, whatever. But like that generally is going to happen because these kids spend so much time in the dugout that like they just want that for their life, for their livelihoods. Like that, like that seems like a really fun life to live. Yeah. It's less about like getting really serious about baseball from a young age and more like I see like take your child to work day.
Yes.
Like I think it's a common thing that kids go to take your child to work day and they're like, I kind of like what my dad does for work or my mom does for work. That's kind of cool. Yeah. And it's take your child to work day every day in a clubhouse and a dugout. Yeah. And these kids just like, they're not forced into it, but like they love it and they don't want to stop doing it. Yeah. They get to mess around on the field. They get to play catch. They get to take BP.
And especially when the activity is kind of a conduit to just spend time with your parent.
Right.
Like you can't deny that part of it. And like
I've seen a decent amount of it. I've never seen it be forced.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen a lot of kids in clubhouses and dugouts.
Yeah.
I've never seen a kid that was forced to be there that, like, clearly doesn't want to be there, that is being forced to be there. It's generally the other way around, where, like, the parent would rather hang out with their teammates and not be a dad in that moment. And it's like, well, it is what it is. Like, my kid really wants this, so. But I think that, like, a lot of people could take cues from people inside of baseball who, like, make baseball their career, and, like, you won't find a whole lot of us who force this onto their children.
Yeah, and the thing that so in terms of the reward, again, there's a better defined answer to this question that captures and weaponizes some of the longitudinal data that we're collecting. I did just go ahead and grab some throwing mocaps from a couple of our long-term kids. What did I grab? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them. So here's one of our players who was with us in year one. His overall composite score of his throwing biomechanics, 80th percentile. Including a lower half block that's 98th percentile, rotational velos, 78th percentile, arm velos, 92nd percentile. And that is our database of everybody, including all of our collegiate and pro players, and that's a 15-year-old kid. Here's another one. This one happens to be mine. 85th percentile overall, arm action 83rd, lower half COG 73rd, rotational velos 84th, hip shoulder separation 66th. Like, moves pretty well.
Because the thing is, if you do the purpose of, and I guess maybe we've never talked about this on the pod, but I at least assume that most people understand, if they're going to listen to this, the purpose of weighted ball throwing, but like the heavier balls are for more efficient mechanics.
Correct. We're trying to pattern and drive efficiency towards throwing mechanics. So when you see this type of stuff, like, or you see like a really good block, right? You see a really good block, and you think about how many times a kid has done the drill stuff in our series that's specifically designed to focus on the lead leg block. Big shocker there. Here's another kid who is a year oneer.
So like I would almost make the argument that, and like we have to run the numbers and see like what the actual velo gains are or whatever, but you won't. I don't think you'll get the entirety of the results without using weighted balls. I do think you will get results without using weighted balls.
Yeah, and it just might not inform this specific thing that I'm pulling, which is really efficient.
But I'm saying if you only throw baseballs, you don't buy plyos from Driveline, you don't have leather weighted balls, you're only throwing baseballs, but you go through our throwing program and you do our drills,
you're going to see some.
You're going to see some gains.
Yep.
Yeah, like you won't see to the level that we will, but like you will see some gains. So if you're afraid, for whatever reason, of like weighted ball throwing, don't throw the weighted balls. Just do our drills. Like they're very similar, and especially the younger the kids are. And like spoiler alert, every ball is weighted. Even a regular baseball has weight. I know.
Impossible.
It's why we're the most dangerous youth baseball podcast. So like for a younger kid, that the overload implement might just be an actual baseball.
Yeah, correct.
And like and then you can throw lighter than a baseball, and the heaviest thing you're throwing is a baseball, and you're technically doing weighted ball training.
Right.
And like you let your kid throw a baseball.
Yeah.
And do these drills, and then it'll clean up a lot of the mechanical stuff. And so like I think it's really basically impossible to answer that question. Other than you will definitely see gains even if you just do our drills and don't throw any weighted balls, and you will see more gains if you actually use the weighted balls.
Yeah, and again, the only other thing that I'll say is that you have to distribute the pie correctly in order to maximize that effect in this balance between training and gameplay, right? And again, you know, we're
part of the reason that all these kids' mechanics are 85th percentiles because they've been learning how to do a hinge in the weight room for 3 years.
Exactly.
So it's really, that's what I'm saying. It's really hard to like decouple all of this and tell you like this is what the reward is for throwing weighted balls.
Yeah, we don't have like a strict like control A versus test. You know, we don't have that. But look, you know, we're seeing the results in terms of the skill development. We're seeing the results in terms of like on the throwing side. We're seeing the results in like the 90-mile-an-hour army of kids, you know, 14, 15 and up that have already hit balls 90. Like. Some of this story is going to get told over time, but and I think the early returns are promising. I think the biggest thing is just mitigating the risk beyond everything we already touched about like forcing structured training on a kid. I think it really comes down to more like distributing the pie in terms of gameplay and effectively dealing with the seasonality of like an off-season development phase in season utilization and not screwing that stuff up.
Yeah, to me that went without saying, and that shouldn't go without saying.
Yeah,
that like you don't do this if you're also going to play 50 weeks out of the year or whatever it is. Right?
Please, Lord, don't do that. Part two of Ben's question, which is really good. Strength training for 8 and 9-year-olds. My son sees me lift weights, and I let him come in and try stuff just for fun. Bought him a kid's weight set, but he asked me for a program. Since he doesn't have the hormonal output to grow muscle mass, wondering what I could do to make it impactful for him and set him up for the future. Most importantly, doing no harm. Perfect idea. Skills to Skill complete youth baseball training manual. Like I am a paid shill, so I just have to pump the fact that there's a long-term athletic development game database in there with a crap ton of modifications, generally written by Connor Stratton, who's a former strength trainer for us in the academy here at Driveline. It's the best possible resource I could give you for kind of the way to do that stuff. I will also tell you that like when my kid was 9, we did some amount of very limited strength training in the form of push-ups, right? Push-ups and body weight type of exercises. So I would say, Ben, that if you've got a kid who's a little bit of a unicorn, and I've got a little bit of experience in that regard, adding in some amount of structure in the form of body weight type exercises is a great starting point. You can pair that with the games, like the long-term athletic development games, and even if you don't buy the book, you can look up online and generally find
LTAD games
some
everywhere,
LTAD game curriculum that's going to be really good. And some dosing of both of those things is probably going to be fine. This actually kind of cuts into another question somebody's going to ask later that we may or may not get to, depending on how deep dive, because we like to talk. But somebody else has a question about, like, it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing, right? It was like, well, if I want, this was actually not in a Q&A. This was in our Academy Slack. Somebody was asking like about like foot speed stuff and agility. Well, should we do like the ladder drills? And it's like, no. Because there's zero research that kind of suggests that there's any benefit to those.
I thought the way Comstock put it was really good.
Yeah.
Ladder drills make you better at ladder drills.
Yeah, which is different than the type of like active and dynamic stability that you need when you're performing sport type movements. So I would honestly say that just like some LTAD game curriculum paired with limited amounts of structure about bodyweight type stuff at 8 or 9 years old is totally fine. It's totally fine. If you've got that kid who's like asking for structure, I'd respond to it.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah, I'm in on that, but I would just frame it in a way where they're getting a little bit of a dose of both.
So my answer has actually changed a bit over the past couple of years as I've seen youth athletes, more and more of them. Go put your kid in gymnastics. Give him a gymnastics like program. At that age, because it's not going to be massively negative if you do some body weight stuff or things like that, but until they can produce testosterone, it's not going to be super valuable.
Yeah.
And I think it is way more valuable for them to be able to learn how to get into different positions, be flexible, be adjustable, be adaptable, and like be an athlete. And again, my answer has changed over the past couple of years because I just at this point don't think anything does that better than gymnastics, which I never thought I would have said a few years ago. Of like, if you're looking to get your kid to be a better athlete and he's younger than 10 or she's younger than 10, I don't know that there's better bang for your buck than throwing them in gymnastics and letting them figure out a bunch of different movement solutions and gain proprioception and stuff like that. We've had athletes that have come in, one in particular who like hadn't played a lot of baseball, but had done a lot of gymnastics. And that kid has skyrocketed since he got in our program because he can do everything we need him to be able to do movement-wise.
Yeah.
And like it's really easy to teach that kid how to do some of the drills and how to do some of the actions that we need him to do because he learned how to do all these different things in gymnastics.
Yeah.
Now he just has to apply it to a different sport. Whereas like the kids that specialize in baseball when they were 6 or 7, they have sport specific capabilities. Yeah. But like as they get older and they need to be better athletes, there are things they struggle to. A lot of them struggle to get into a hinge position and hold it.
Yeah,
which is like not really a thing that you're going to see a gymnast or someone who had done a lot of gymnastics before the age of 10 struggle with specifically. So like that's like if they're looking for like a program, I would honestly search like gymnastics programs online and see if there's like I mean like even if it's just hey we're gonna do 10 reps we're gonna somersault for 10 yards and then do like attempt to do cartwheels for 10 yards or whatever it is like that I promise you is going to be valuable.
Yeah, I mean I never had D in gymnastics, but like the way that we ran a soccer practice because I was able to get practice plans that like leaned into all this like movement based stuff and changing direction and challenging and like we just build this foundation where like you introduce the movement, you challenge it, and then it's just like hey play 2v1 keep away in a box with 2 motivated 8-year-olds is going to force them to like learn how to move. Mm-hmm. And you got to have some of that amount of stimulus. So yeah, I think you're exactly right that like he does. Your son doesn't have the hormonal output to kind of drive the what we would call like hardware type of changes. He does have the ability to make what we call software type of changes. Again, this is a whole chapter in the Skills of Scale book, but the short answer is that like kids can harness like their neurological output and improve it even if they can't stack on muscle through like the hypertrophy process. So. There's some stuff there. You just want to find the right mix for your kid. Okay, new questions. Garrett has a question. This is a good one. Is there a cutoff temperature for getting outside and long tossing? My ninth grader is working through the Jaeger long toss program that was updated in September. Shout out to Alan Jaeger. We live in Maryland. He can warm up inside, can tolerate cold temperatures.
You live in Maryland, you're fine.
Curious if there's a too cold to throw temperature, if he's able to get properly warmed up. I would say no.
There is, I grew up in the Chicago area. I went to school in Minneapolis. No, the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, but contingent upon getting a good warm up. Right, like that part of it, I think, is relatively important.
For sure.
But that's just important in any temperature.
It's important in any temperature, right? And it's easier to, I think, maintain or like get warm quick in a hot climate than it is in that. And like, look, I think the biggest blocker here would be like, do you look like the child from the Christmas Story?
Yeah.
Like, can you actually, with the amount of layers that are on you, physically throw a baseball? If the answer to that is no.
Probably bang it.
Yeah, do it inside. Like if you're in Minnesota and it's -5 degrees with a -40 wind chill, like you could throw outside. The amount of layers you'd have to have on just to not get frostbite probably means you're not gonna like really have much range of motion. So like if you look like the kid from the Christmas Story, no, don't go throw. Like if you can't put your arms down. But other than that, like there's not like. Physiologically, there's no, it's too cold to throw long toss. It's just like, what are you comfortable with?
Yeah, exactly. Ryan has a question here. Has there been any long-term analysis with an age group of my Driveline Academy kids from when you started the Skills to Scale program with them? In other words, what kind of positive progression in terms of bat speed and or velocity improvements we've made throughout the years of kids within this age group? Basically the same as Ben's question here. We give basically the same answer. And I guess the only other detail I'll give you is like, when Danny popped the 88.5 in his mocap, I pulled it up, and from the first measured throw he had at Driveline in 2018, he's up 40.1 miles an hour.
And so I'll add some color here. A lot of these results that we're going to, if we look at the, would you say 35-ish kids that have been here since that time, we're going to get a lot of results similar to that.
Yes.
Where we have 30-plus mile-an-hour gains in exit velo, throwing velo, what have you. And, like, it's real, it's valuable, and it is a good signal. Having said all of that, I do think that there, like, to add some context to this, this is, to me, a bit of an outlier group, because these are kids who, by and large, bought in from the beginning. And a lot of their teammates over the past few years have left. They've stayed. And, you know, when you're going to do a lot of things wrong when you're starting something. And they stayed through a bunch of our hiccups in year 1, year 2, year 3, because they got the grander message. They got the bigger picture. And so, like, that's some context in there of, like, these are all really bought in kids getting these results. It's not like we don't really have results of, like, an 11-year-old who came here who, like, kind of liked baseball and, like, did the training, went through the motions, and, like, this is what he gained after 4 years. Like, we have the results of, like, oh, this is an 11-year-old who took this extremely seriously, who was at practice 3 times a week, whose parents are bought in, they're bought in, they fully believe in this, and, they gained 30 miles an hour. And there's a bunch of different types of those. Body types, genetics, like, different positions. Like, we've done it with a range of kids, but, like, the thing that connects all of those kids is they were willing to buy in and, like, go through some hiccups that we had, whereas a lot of these other kids weren't.
Yeah.
I think what's telling to me is that we have, now that this age group is like 15, 16, they have a lot of kids that are their age that they at one point played with at Driveline, who will make comments about, along the lines of, like, we should never have left.
Yeah.
Because they look at what our kids look like versus what they look like.
Yeah.
And, like, they won 3 more plastic trophies than our kids did over the past couple years. But our kids are throwing 8 to 10 miles an hour harder. And
who's talking to college coaches?
And, like, a lot of these kids are starting to realize we shouldn't have left. Like, that wasn't the greatest choice. And, like, I was better than that kid. I left, and I'm, like, an okay baseball player, and now that kid's throwing 84. Like, I could be doing that. And we're getting a lot more of that as these kids get older, which I always find somewhat enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, I was pulling up like, Max Rojas. Like Max was with me in the Little League days before I came to Driveline. He came to some of the sessions we had when I first started in the old building. His mocap, he's up 28.3 miles an hour since we started just the teams. So like, I guess I say all that to say that, we need to do a better job of like telling these stories at scale and digging into the data. In terms of positive progression, man, like it's there, like we're in a really good place.
And there is not, and like, again, this is going to be, there's definitely some bias in here, but there's not a single kid that has done it and not gotten significantly better. And again, there's bias in there because, like, if you're not getting significantly better, you probably wouldn't do this thing for 5 years.
Yeah.
But, like, very rarely have we had a kid quit after being here for 2 years.
Yes.
If they come back for the second year, and then it goes well and they decide to come back for the third year, like, they're bought in and we don't lose those kids at this point, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Kieran is a Plus member, doesn't really have a question, but just said he was listening to Michael Jordan, The Life autobiography, audiobook biography. One of the things touched on there a few times was how Jordan was dominant in youth baseball, but struggled a ton with the transition to 60-90. Almost, he says, almost sounded like I was listening to a Driveline podcast. Yeah, I mean, if you want to connect us with Michael Jordan, we'll have him on as a guest. We'd open up the chair for him.
I would vacate this chair so fast for Michael Jordan to be here, and he would probably hate me. Not the nicest of. I love Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Literally, my password on my computer is MJ, and my Wi-Fi at home. If you ever in my apartment, allegedly. But like I don't think he would be super gracious with his time.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's not that type of guy.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't appear to be, but I don't know. You never know.
But I mean, if we want me to go on my Michael Jordan baseball rant, I can, because that man hadn't played baseball for 10 years, jumped into AAA and hit 240.
Yeah, which is
incredible.
You kind of got to get
it's incredible.
Props there. Like,
people make fun of him, and they are nuts because what he did is absurd.
Yeah, it's pretty preposterous. All right, we're getting into some of my Twitter questions here. One. From Levi, best alternative to long toss. Can't really throw at a high release angle indoors either with the current situation. Should I increase plyo or pull down volume?
No, definitely not pull down volume.
Pull down volume, no, don't do that.
So I'll say what we do in here.
Yeah.
I think that might, I don't know the setup, the situation, but that might help.
Yeah.
Designate different, if you're throwing into a net or a wall, different areas, markers, locations, whatever you want on the wall to throw to, and increase the verticality of those markers to simulate throwing longer distances, and then bring them back down.
Yeah, and he goes, you can't really throw at a high release angle with their indoors, so I think he's a little bit constrained there. So,
but it sounds like it's probably a cage.
Yeah, I don't know. If I think about what the benefit of long toss is, right? It's I don't know that the release angle really has a ton to do with it, more than like the volume of throwing.
I mean, you want a lower release angle.
Yeah.
You don't want to lollipop it.
Yeah. But so if you think about the benefit of long toss, I mean, does it really come down to just kind of like a free and easy arm action where you're utilizing a little bit of like lower half linear movement, not like a pull down, but like you're getting a couple steps in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Couple steps and go. And it's, I mean, you look, Alan Jager, if you listen to him talk about long toss, he'll give you an hour any day of the week that you want to talk about long toss, about this concept of like listening to the arm and having it be progressive. And I think you can do that type of stuff in a pinch if you're not in an environment where I could throw at, like, if you were just on this wall, right? If I had like a head high target and then a one, at the top by the ceiling there. I mean, that would be better than nothing.
It'd be better than nothing. And I would tell you, in that constraint, you can mark spots on the wall.
Yeah.
And then you can distance yourself from the wall.
Yes.
So like try to simulate throwing higher.
Yeah, that's probably
and
better.
Lower. And like that would be the best solution I would come up with constraints. I don't think it is beneficial to just increase the volume of regular throwing or definitely increase the volume of pull downs.
Yeah, not that.
It's not. I mean, you can maybe add a handful of compression throws in to kind of simulate the long toss. But I do think there's like diminishing returns there, and there's real value in doing long toss if you can. And if you can't, probably not trying to replace it with just increasing the volume of regular baseball throws, because it's not volume that's the important part about long toss.
Yeah, and I would even be a little bit cautious about increasing the volume of like compression throws if you can't find a way, even in a limited environment, to kind of like progressively increase your RPE to the point that you can actually like, okay, now I'm hot, now I can put one on a line.
Right. I mean, the thought is you're doing enough warm-up throws that's where you get to that point, and then I can, like, if I have a wall to throw at, I can get a volume of throws in, but I can't get the long toss height in. Yeah. So, okay, I'm just going to get my volume of throws in, and then once I hit the volume, I'm going to throw 8 compression throws to simulate like what it would be like to throw my longest long toss, and I can throw them into the wall as opposed to like trying to aim high. But I wouldn't do that. Like I'm spitballing here, but I don't think I would do that.
Yeah. So that's tough. That's tough. I don't know that our answers are the best.
Yeah, our answers are definitely not the best because I haven't thought about this a ton. I can think about it and try to come up with a better answer next week. But I would say use what you have and just change your target. Change the height of your target to simulate throwing for more distance.
Yeah. His other question is advice for training a hypermobile athlete. Are plyo balls still safe? I'm not concerned about hypermobility. I would be concerned that the reason that you're hesitant about throwing plyos is perhaps bad research put out by a certain person that I have disparaged on this podcast on numerous occasions, who did a really bad study and concluded that like the only mechanism of benefit of throwing plyos is increased amounts of shoulder ER, external rotation, if you're not familiar. I mean, do hypermobile athletes require maybe a little bit more supervision? I suppose so. But if you are introducing plyo balls and something greater than the weight of a 5-ounce baseball, I think so long as you have an eye for like what the technically proficient execution of the drill looks like, it's just a question of whether they can execute that or not. Mm-hmm. And if they can't, then regress the ball weight, right? Give them something lighter. And if they can, let them stay there and look for whether they might need additional stimulus. Like I was having this conversation with somebody the other day about like this concept of regressing ball weights or plyos. And it's hard, right? It's hard to unpack because there's no clear like, well, if your child is 10 years old and they weigh 75 pounds, you should give them a 450 grand blue ball for pivot picks.
Yeah.
Like maybe,
right.
I mean, maybe. You know, like my kid did green ball pivot picks when he was 9 because we were dumb.
Yeah, we didn't know any better, right?
We didn't know any better. It didn't hurt him. And again, I think the number one thing that you need to be mindful of in terms of throwing health is probably not the limited amount of plyo drill throws, but it's the overall volume of throws and the rest that may
right, that's why it didn't hurt him. It was moderation.
Yeah.
Right, he's not ripping 50 green ball pivot picks.
Yeah, so yeah, for a hypermobile kid, my concern is just like technically proficient within an acceptable realm for a kid of the drills, and just kind of start from there and regress the ball weights if you have to. All right, this is we're kind of going backwards. All right, fine, we're just going to go backwards. Question 10U kid. This is from David Bentley. Please discuss your take on a kid's decision to play, number 1, on a squad with his friends where the coach has very minimal knowledge or development, knowledge on development, or 2, with a team where the kid knows 0 teammates but gets frequent instruction from multiple ex-pro players. So they're 10.
That's such a difficult... There's
so
much extra information that I would need to know before I can make this decision. Like,
Yeah, so like off top, man, for at 10, the thing that I'm going to continue to fall back on is just like engagement, right? Like do I want every 10-year-old to be in a developmentally progressive environment for their youth baseball experience? Yes. Is us having a future on our game contingent upon that? No, it's contingent upon having kids that want to play.
Right.
So I suppose ultimately at the end of the day, I would let a kid play with their friends if that meant that they continued to play baseball and the other thing didn't.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with parents at Driveline.
Yeah.
That their kid enjoys it here. He got better. They love it here, but he really wants to finish his 12U Little League with his friends. Or 11U, whatever. Like he really wants to do that piece with his friends. So like they plan on coming back later, and it's just like, look, the only thing that matters is that kid continues to play baseball at the end of the day. So like, yes, gun to my head, that's the answer I'm going to give is that like, yeah, let the 10-year-old go play with his friends. And like one of the other things I would say is don't just assume because someone is an ex MLB player or ex minor leaguer that they're going to have a lot of knowledge about development that this presumably dad coach of the team of friends doesn't have.
And I would go one step further and say if these ex-pros can't also present whatever information that they have in an engaging format that like gets these kids bought in, it doesn't matter how much they know. Right? Just because you know some stuff doesn't preclude it doesn't presume that you have the ability to teach it.
Right. And I 1,000,000% understand the social, emotional aspect of like playing with your friends versus playing with nobody you know. I do think that like you could probably toss that kid into a practice or a tryout which is how we run our tryouts, is we toss a kid into the group with the team and see how they react to the teammates. Because like for the most important thing for us, because we don't care necessarily about winning and losing, is this kid going to be a good trainee?
Yeah.
Is he going to fit with the rest of the teammates? And is he going to add to this positive experience that we have and this positive environment that we have going? And that's why we throw him into that team practice setting, because you can tell pretty quickly. Like, kids are generally used to having to meet people and make new friends. And you can tell pretty quickly whether a kid is good at that or a kid is bad at that or what kind of relationships he's able to build pretty quickly if you throw him in with a new group and just watch. So, like, I might suggest that for your 10-year-old of like, if you're choosing between these two teams and one of them is like, I don't know anybody there, take him to a practice.
Yeah.
If that's the thing they do, take him to a practice, try to get him to meet some of those kids. Cause like he might like them.
Yeah.
And like, it might increase his friend group, expand his horizons. Like I've seen with my group, different friendships form over the past few years, and it's not like they're not friends with the people they started being super, super close with. But like, the one that your kid was basically inseparable from when they were 13, it's not the same one now. And like it's, they change as they get older, and you never know how they're going to react to a different group of people. So like, I don't know that I'd make the decision and be like, yeah, just go play with your friends. Like I would want him to meet those other kids first and like, okay, yeah, if it's a miserable experience and you hate it, yes, we'll go with your friends. But like, if those kids were kind of nice and you liked them, like, let's give it a shot. Let's meet some new kids. Let's try this thing. Again, that is contingent upon them actually knowing what they're doing and not just assuming that they played professional baseball so they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I just wouldn't force the ex-pro thing, as if your kid does go to that practice and doesn't really vibe with the kids and the coaches,
I would so much rather send my kid to a dad coach who knows next to nothing about development than a former minor leaguer who thinks he knows a lot about development and is coaching your kid the way he was coached in like a very negative way.
Yeah, because that one can be not great.
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan. Development. When should my kids start training? So we kind of just talked about this, right? He's 10U this coming season, loves baseball, is always gobbling up more, even listens to the podcast with me. Shout out to you, kid. I was thinking yoga and bands make sense for now, but do I wait for his growth spurt to have him work with weights? So a couple things. And I think this question is relatively frequent, so let's just we're going to try to just kill it. So American Society of Pediatricians, or American Association of Pediatricians, I can't remember. Anyways, you can find it, has been on record saying that strength training, resistance training is safe and effective for kids starting at age 8 since like 2017 or 16 or something like that. Again, whole chapter on this stuff in the Skills to Scale book. So first of all, you don't need to wait for a growth spurt to start working with any type of resistance training. Now, the question is, what's the appropriate way to do that? For a kid that's 10 years old right now, again, it's kind of the same thing we said before. Games that are going to make that kid a better mover are the first thing to identify. So you're going to look for long-term athletic development curriculum, chapter about it in the book. Again, I'm a paid shill, is a great place to start. If your kid is responsive to some type of structure there, then I think body weight stuff is a great place to start. If you have a kid who's engaged with that stuff and like yoga works for them, I think that's fine, right? Like, one of my wife's best friends is a yogi. Is that fair?
I believe,
to say?
yes.
She's a yogi. Pam, how are you?
No shot she listens to this.
Yeah, no shot she listens to this. But I know she's dumb strong, right? She's dumb strong. Now, can she outlift me under a barbell? Well, no, but I can't hang with her in a yoga session for more than about maybe 10 minutes max, and I'm cooked.
So I've been doing yoga for years.
You for real?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. That's why I can actually touch my toes while most of our athletes can't.
Yeah.
And like often when they're doing dynamic warm-ups, they'll get into like yoga positions and they're terribly inflexible.
Sure. And
they don't really know how to do it. I was someone who never thought he'd be able to touch his toes. I just didn't think I could bend that way. I didn't think I was flexible. And it took like 3 weeks maybe.
Yeah.
And you see the differences pretty immediately. And it's not like force production.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah. I can get to a lot of different positions. And there's a ton of value in that.
Yeah. So yeah, man, I mean, I think, Ryan, again, what this comes down to is you want to find a container for like activity and sport with your kid that they're going to engage in. And I think if you understand the broad parameters here, that resistance training is safe for kids. You don't need to wait for them to go through a growth spurt or for testosterone to start firing. That's preposterous. Don't do that. But also understand that there are things you can do right now before that process happens that's going to give them stimulus to help them adapt the way that they move, and they're going to move better, which to a certain degree is going to result in increased athletic performance now. You're going to get to the point where you need to increase rates of force production. That's later. You can start to front load some of that stuff now. I think it's just about, man, just finding like for your kid a container that makes it fun and engaging for them.
Yeah, because, I mean, consistency is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And they have to want to do whatever this is consistently. And if it's not fun and engaging, they're not going to want to do it consistently.
Yep.
If you have to, like, coerce your young child to do something, and, like, I played piano when I was younger.
Yeah?
Yeah. Started with lessons like kindergarten or whatever.
Yeah.
My parents' rule was, maybe it was like first grade, whatever it was. You can quit. I think it was once you get to fourth grade. If you don't want to do this anymore, you can quit. They coerced me to go to piano practice once a week for 3 years. The second I had the option, I quit.
Yeah.
Going back, I regret quitting, but like I didn't enjoy piano lessons.
Yeah.
I wish I knew how to play the piano, but I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't my choice. It wasn't something I was going to do consistently because I was forced to do it. If that's what you're turning baseball in or whatever training into for your child, it's not going to work because eventually you can't coerce them to do it and they have to make that choice. The more you force them when they're younger, in my opinion, the less likely they're going to be to actually make that choice. The choice you want them to when they get to that age.
Yeah, because you're going to come to the point in your parenting where you're not playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots anymore, man. Like, your kid has to make the decision for themselves.
Right.
Like, that's the place that you inevitably get to. And when Michelle and I were like really young parents, you kind of get accustomed to the fact that like you just have to make a lot of decisions for your kid. But then as you start getting closer to the teenage years, you get like a little bit of a peek under the hood that like, yeah, this doesn't last forever, which is why it's contingent when they're young on you to like burn in this stuff, like this intrinsic motivation, right? Like you want them to make the autonomous choice about choosing this stuff rather than forcing them a la piano.
Yeah, and like I will recommend David Yeager's book. I can't
10 to 25 Science Motivating Young People. Shout out to my guy David Yeager.
But like there's yes, when your children are young, you have to make a lot of choices for them. You can do it in a way that makes them feel like they have agency over some of these choices.
Yes.
And I do think the more you do that, the likelier they are to make the choice that you want them to once they get to that point. The more they think it's the choice you want them to make because you force them to make it, the less likely, in my opinion, they are to actually make that choice when the time comes.
Yep, for sure.
And like, I get it. For all the parents that are like, my child is 11 or younger or 12 or younger, and like he really wants to lift weights and like start weightlifting. He watches me do it, whatever it is. Like he really wants to do that. And like, I'm having to bat these questions off daily of like, can I lift weights or whatever? We get them all the time from our younger kids here. They stop asking the questions the second they're dripping in sweat playing LTAD games, having a ton of fun, not really realizing how much better athletically they're getting. Like I was watching them on Tuesday do a game where the one kid was behind with there's two kids in a row. Kid in front has a resistance band around his waist.
Oh, yeah.
Kid behind him is holding onto the band.
Yeah.
And then it's a game. You have to run forward to that next pole, and the guy behind you's got to stop you from getting to that pole.
Yep.
Right? This is basically pushing sleds.
Yep.
They are running at full speed trying to pull a guy behind them who is trying to pull them back. Great strength training.
Yeah.
And these kids had so much fun with it. You would not know for 1 second that they were actually gaining strength or gaining something out of it athletically. And like, they're going to ask you if they can lift weights. You just have to either let them do that if they're ready for that, or find another container to get similar adaptations while having a lot more fun than just putting a kid under a bar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, getting a kid under a barbell is a great place to be, but you know the odds that that's even going to be successful if you haven't started to pattern in some of the movements you need prior to, right? Either with body weight or with some amount of external load that isn't a barbell. It's probably not even going to be the way you want to go anyways.
Yeah. Or just like, here's a fun one. Do you see this line? Do you think you can jump higher than it?
Yeah.
And just continue to try to jump higher, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not, there's a lot of different ways you can do LTAD games without like making it really, really formal.
Yeah. 100%. Phil Griffin, best resources for finding outcome and constraint-based drills to address specific swing flaws and hitting deficiencies.
Am I pointing at it?
It's the answers are there. It's just in the book. In terms of swing flaws, we address a couple of like the more common ones that people talk about is like, kids are pulling their head and kids stepping in the bucket. And we talked about when we were kind of going through like the final development part of things, we talked about doing a lot more like, hey, this is specific. He keeps his back elbow down or like whatever, right? And we actively chose not to do that. So instead, I wrote a chapter that's about like how to think about these things. Mm-hmm. Because the odds are that when you're talking about kids, they all have one specific swing deficiency or another. So first of all, and even if they don't have a major deficiency, their swing is an expression of how they can move right now in the implement that they have to move. And this thing changes because it changes by rule. you go from drop 12s and drop 10s to drop 8s to drop 5s to BB core, which is a drop 3. So that thing is going to change by rule, and as the implement change, it then opens up the door to ask the question of whether they have the system and movement capacity to still express movement the same way when that implement has to change. So, we approach this again as per usual in like a very long-term holistic sense. And it's like, look, if you understand the system of movement has a lot more to do with the swing than like the swing just kind of like exists on this abstract thing over here that isn't influenced by the overall physiological system of movement, then you have to address this first. You have to, which is why, like the core, 5 or 6 hitting drills we do, or the 5 or 6 throwing drills we do, are all designed to kind of like take the movement, break it down, constrain it, and then loosen that constraint over time in these different positions. So the best resource is the book that is my life's work. So you should probably go get that.
This week it's on sale.
It's on sale this week. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Look, you can go on the Driveline blog. There's some blogs that I've written, some blogs that Jason Ochart has written, some blogs that Chase Glaum, Glaum, has written that revolve around some of this stuff. I would dig into those as well, but like the best answer is probably just check out the book because I got a lot of good stuff for you there. Cubs Bucks 84.
Cubs Bucks?
Yeah, strong username. He's a Chicago Cubs, Ohio State guy.
Oh, okay. I was, my mind went to Milwaukee Bucks. And I was
yeah. So he's number 1. Tango and Cash is amazing because I did the post with the old Tango and Cash handshake gif because who doesn't like a little
Cubs Bucks? You're aging yourself.
Yeah, I know. Kurt Russell, Sylvester Stallone, goodness. I actually turned on Escape from LA the other night.
Why not?
I mean, boy, you want to talk about a time machine. I feel really old. Anyways, once we get past the Tango and Cash appreciation, I really appreciate and agree with Driveline's philosophy and data-driven approach to long-term youth development. What is the best way to implement this long-term development philosophy as a team and community? As a 9U travel coach in a small but competitive community, I really want to implement more focus on long-term development, but fear there will be pushback from those focused on short-term results. You're right. There will be. Again, when I looked at those year 1 rosters today, I sent a message to my wife, and I was just like, man, it doesn't make me feel good that like we haven't kept a greater percentage of those year 1 kids. And I can ascribe a lot of that to just like, growing pains of starting a thing and never doing it before. I think some of that also has to do with maybe not doing the best job that we could of communicating the long-term approach. But
I think in part, both year 1 and year 2, there was a lot of, a thing is new.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it out because the thing is new, where it's not necessarily I was looking specifically for somewhere that was going to give me training in long-term development, which is a little bit more of the kids we get now.
Yes.
Back then, it was like, this is new. We're going to try it out. We'll see.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I've thought previously is that like I tend to lay this blame at my feet and just go like, hey, I didn't do a good enough job of messaging the intent. And I'm not going to – I think that's still true. But, when I was talking to the wife about it, it's like I think the presumption that I could do an 80-grade job of that explanation and that 80-grade explanation is then going to translate into 100% year-over-year retention is also not true.
Well, what I've come to learn.
Yeah.
Number 70%. You can only ever keep 70% of people happy. If you're aiming to keep more than 70% of people happy, you're likely just going to drive yourself nuts, and it's a futile exercise.
Yeah. So I guess what I would say is that to this question of, your market is you're a small but competitive community, and you want to focus on long-term development, and you're afraid that there are going to be these people who have a much more shorter term time horizon, that you're not going to be able to convert those people. And I guess all I can say to you based on my own experience is that like you're probably right.
You're probably right.
You're probably right. And that sucks because we can look at those people and say like, well, they all would get better if they just understood it. But it's like...
The only thing you can really do, and it's going to be successful with some amount of these people, and it's not going to be successful with some amount of these people, is try to get them to really be on the same page about what short-term success means. Because I think what we've learned is it's impossible to get someone on the page of long-term.
Yeah.
Because that's really hard. I might not have actual answers for you for 2 years.
Yeah.
Most people aren't willing to sign up their 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old for something that, like, I really won't know for another 2 years whether or not this was actually the right decision. So it's going to be harder to really make the long-term argument. And, like, the short-term argument is, like, what's more important? All these kids want to play baseball again next year, or we win some games this summer?
Yeah, and I think that's in the messaging thing, right? You're looking at starting a 9U thing. You have a 9U team. You want to bring this into the community. I think it's worthwhile to ask those people that you think may have a little bit of more of a short-term perspective, like, what are the things that they value? Like what's
success?
We're 12 months removed from this day.
Right.
What would success be
right.
for you? And if they say
anything to do with trophies or wins, you're probably never going to convince that person.
Yeah, it's tough,
But most people will agree that the goal is my kid wants to play baseball again next year over game, like we won X amount of games or X amount of tournaments. Like
you're going to get that answer, but then the path in the interim is going to be the thing that like you're going to have some divergent choices,
right? And like I think a lot about what our friend Jordan Baltimore said at ABCA last year, which like I'd never really thought about it that way before, but he's 100% right. Is that like baseball sucks if you're not very good at it.
It's the worst.
It is the worst. You can't, it's not like another sport where you can kind of hide on the field and still participate. There's going to be a time in that game, actually multiple times, where you're going to have to step up to the plate and everyone's staring at you, watching you fail. There's like the way baseball works, if you don't want the ball to come to you in the field, it's going to come to you constantly. And like baseball is one of the few team sports where like you can't hide.
Yeah.
If you're not good at it, there's not really a place for you on the field.
Yep.
So explaining to some of these parents that like that's why we're doing this is because like I want your kid to keep having fun playing baseball and want to keep playing baseball, and we're 2-3 years away from him really not enjoying baseball because he can't get the ball to the infield.
Yeah.
And like that's got to be the biggest focus. And like it sounds like this is a community league. So, like, there's several teams here. It's not just, like, one team that he's trying to convince one team of 12 parents to not play in tournaments this year or something along those lines.
As a team and as a community is
so, like,
the question.
This is better for the whole community. What I would suggest, and I don't know where this person lives, but go to your high school coach.
Yeah.
Get your high school coach on board for having better high school players and like a better pipeline to get them to high school players and be competitive high school players, and then have your high school coach talk to some of these families of like, no, like this is like, if he wants to play competitive high school baseball, these are the kind of the benchmarks I'm looking for. I need him to be able to throw across the field. I need him to be able to hit a ball out of the infield.
Yeah.
And like what he's going to do, it may not provide as many wins this summer, but it's a league. So like someone has to win, right? Someone's got to lose whether or not you're doing it this the right way. I would try to get some help from your high school coach.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, again, like, talk about it in the book, the throw from the 6-hole, from the shortstop position on a 90-foot field is like 127, 130-ish feet. Mm-hmm. That task is going to arrive at your kid's doorstep when they are like 14 years old. Mm-hmm. So if you are starting at 9U and you kind of understand that that's the destination you want to get to, and that's going to be contingent upon not only the skill but also the enjoyment, then it's easy to construct a short-term experience that pushes those things forward. Your friends and neighbors in the community that don't have that perspective have every reason to like discard those types of developments because it's just not real to them. So I think getting some local help in the form of a high school coach, and really starting to unpack that thing, man, and The only thing I will tell you is it comes way faster than you think. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember the first time I walked into Driveline like it was yesterday, and Danny was 8. And now he is like eye to eye with me, and he's like, he thinks he's taller than me because of his stupid hair. It's fine.
Is his hair only stupid because you used to have it?
Yeah. R.I.P. Nick has a good question here. Son is 8 years old, pitching, hitting, and fielding well compared to most boys in his league. Is it time to get into a more competitive league, i.e. travel or select, etc.? Will a more competitive environment be a good thing? I would not rush this travel or select thing in the slightest.
Is your child having fun?
Is your child having fun? If the answer is yes, I would continue to do what you're doing.
Yes. If an 8 or 9?
8 years old.
All right. So if your 8-year-old comes to you and says, I'm bored because I'm better than everyone else out there, sure.
That's a different thing.
That's a different thing. If he's enjoying himself, like, yeah, I would not rush that in any way. It'll be there for him.
Yeah.
He's not going to miss out on anything not doing 9U travel ball.
Yeah, because the thing that's going to happen in a more competitive environment...
Increased failure.
It just means increased failure and increased consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And now the question becomes not about the environment, but about your child and what tools and systems and structure they have to be able to put that stuff into context. Because most 8-year-olds... really enjoy baseball when they're successful, and they don't like it when they're not. So consider you might be taking your child from like big fish, small pond to now medium to smaller size fish in a big pond. Mm-hmm. And unless they are able to kind of contextualize that experience, and you're able to provide the support, like the emotional support and safety for them to go through that experience, and they're receptive to it, now you just run the risk of just like, the kid hates baseball now.
Yeah, it takes on, not to like do the whole Billy Madison stay as long as you can kind of thing, but like a little bit like stay as long as you can, because it takes on a different meaning.
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit more serious. It matters it doesn't actually matter more, but they think it matters more. They feel like it matters more. And like, if your kid is having an enjoyable time right now, at some point, it's going to have to get more competitive. If he continues to love playing baseball, he is going to have to be that small fish in a bigger pond at some point. There's just, in my opinion, no reason to rush that.
You're not missing anything.
Right, you're not gaining anything by rushing that.
Yeah, because again, there is nothing, because the kid's 8 right now. There's nothing you can learn as an 8 to 12-year-old baseball player that really even future-proofs your ability to be competitive at 14.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it doesn't work that way. I mean, again, we are attached to this idea of skills of scale and building that foundation, but that still means that, like, hey, we got to get to one place when we're 12. We have 2 years that we still, are trying to get the engagement to stay high, the love for the game to stay high, and then the skill development to kind of move in the line that it needs to move in. So
and he'll make that choice at some point, right? Maybe it's 8, maybe it is 8, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 12, where he's like, all right, Little League was fun, I'm done with Little League. I kind of want to take it more seriously now after Little League. Yep. Great. At the end of 12U, you have a full year. Generally, that's a big year in terms of puberty gains as well, to like really attack that before you hit 14U. And then you should treat 14U, for most kids that's 8th grade, as a completely developmental year, just getting ready to be on a big field and preparing for your freshman year of high school.
Yeah,
then you still have 2 full years to do that, even if after Little League you decide. Like, if you don't decide to get more serious until after Little League, you still have plenty of time to get up to speed to where you need to be on a 14U field.
I mean, I know I have a sheet in here somewhere where I literally have like some of Danny's stats when he was still playing Little League baseball, and I don't know. I'll see if I can find it while I'm talking. But like, the only thing I can tell you is just that there's no problem with your kid hitting like 700 in Little League. It's not a problem. And I think sometimes we talk ourselves into this idea that like, well, if he's just really crushing it, or he or she is like super successful, then like we need to ratchet up. They can't be that successful. That can't be good for them.
Right.
Counterpoint.
Right.
Counterpoint. If your kid has like an OPS of like 2.5, that's tight.
Yeah.
That's tight.
Yeah.
They're
probably having a lot of fun.
Yeah, like I've been meaning to write this blog about, we've heard people that are like that talk about this idea that playing in Little League against kids that aren't as good as them can lead to bad habits. And like I'm sorry, man, I don't buy that in the absolute slightest.
I do buy that.
How so?
I think they pick up bad habits sitting in the car ride on the way home, listening to mom and dad complain about all their teammates being worse than they are.
Yeah, that's a terrible habit to pick up.
Mm-hmm. And you get into the habit of thinking you're the best player on the team, of not trusting your teammates, of feeling like you can't possibly play at your best unless you're the worst on the team, or there's several kids better than you, or whatever it is. And like those are really difficult habits to break. I mean, we're not talking actual physical habits here, but like those are very difficult mental habits to break.
Yeah,
of like
tough.
Turning around and blaming your teammates for things that go wrong. If you're the best player in Little League and mom and dad are telling you that all the time, it's never your fault when your team loses a game because you're the best player.
Yeah.
So now I'm just blaming it on my teammates, and I do think it can create bad habits. I just don't think any of them have to do with playing baseball.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I found it. So when Danny was like 10 years old, he put up like a 1.2 OPS in the Little League in the regular season. Batted 400, on base 564. It's fine.
I was gonna say, did you say that to be impressive? Because
I mean, there's a kid here, a kid who slugged a 2.
Yeah, I mean, your son had a 500 on base this year.
Yeah, I know.
It's not that much different than.
I know. I just to prove that point that like you're not missing anything by like, oh, my kid would be so much better if they were batting like 300 and they were failing more. Like, no shot.
There's a time and place for that.
Yeah.
Let your child let you know when that time and place has arrived.
Yeah, for sure.
Of like, I'm ready to face better competition.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's a correlation here to like how quickly some organizations move guys as opposed to other guys through the minor leagues, and like there are the organizations out there who you absolutely have to crush it at a level before you get moved up.
Yeah.
Like you overcook in the minors.
Yeah.
Generally, those organizations those guys struggle a lot less when they make the big leagues. If they like get more time to not just like prove they can handle a level, but straight up dominate a level.
Yeah.
Then you move them up, and we're in a way better shape. So if your kid is handling Little League very well, great. There's no reason that you should feel like he should be in a league where he can't handle it very well.
Yeah.
If he is like dominating it to the point of, and like I wouldn't even say a 1.2 OPS is dominating, right? Like if he's dominated, there was a kid that I grew up with, shout out Ben, who literally had to move up an age level because he would get intentionally walked 80% of his at-bats or more. Like if he wasn't leading off an inning, or nobody on with 2 outs, he was getting intentionally walked because that kid was hitting a bomb when we were like 12 or 13. He was an incredible baseball player. He didn't even play baseball in high school because he got moved up to an older group because they would actually pitch to him. The second or third game, he got hit in the face with a pitch because he wasn't prepared for the velo. Got scared and quit playing baseball.
Yeah.
And like that kid was a real argument for moving that kid up because he was getting walked every time. This is like not valuable to you at all.
Right.
Like you should probably play at a high level competition.
Right.
And within 3 months, that kid's joy of baseball is now ruined. So like just be really careful if you feel like your kid needs a higher level of competition, even if they're dominating the current competition. If your child is under like 12.
Yeah. You just
let him dominate 12-year-old competition. Who cares?
It's fine. Okay, we'll move quickly through these last ones here. Youth Power Bat, the 28-incher estimated timing. I know you guys are working on it. I should have a production ETA relatively soon. We're going to put out a pre-order thing sometime in the next 36 days. By January 1, we'll have a pre-order available for the 28-inch power bat. I promise this is going to be a thing. We're going to make it happen. My guy, Evan. For a high school player, the closest gym we can access is a CrossFit gym. Do the cons outweigh the pros? What do you recommend for families who do not have a robust home gym or are unable to access a traditional gym frequently? Something that's better than nothing for me. Like, I think the biggest concerns that I would have about CrossFit is really just kind of comes down to excessive volume. Right? Like, it's not that folks don't get strong and get really crazy capable doing CrossFit stuff. It seems to be an issue when the volume of the workout goes into like a fairly absurd place. And for Aiden, I happen to know his kid, that's something that you guys can mitigate. So I for sure wouldn't have a problem doing CrossFit.
I wouldn't either for the same reasons. That's probably a question I would throw to our strength trainers also.
Yeah.
Because I'd be curious to hear their take on what is the real downside? What's the real detriment? Is it just volume and like you can mitigate that? Or is there something sport specific that the two of us are missing that CrossFit doesn't do?
Yeah, but I guess I'm just thinking about it broadly. Some amount of strength stimulus
is better than nothing.
Better than nothing, and I think that's kind of where I would land. And I think so long as you solve for the stuff that may be potentially concerning or injurious, then it's fine. I mean, CrossFit workouts are going to teach you how to hinge.
I think. See, I've never done CrossFit workouts, but I've also never hinged, according to Kozak. We don't have that in.
We don't have straight.
We don't have like a body weight.
Yeah, I mean, there's some body weight stuff in there in the Skills at Scale book. If you were looking for some stuff you could do on a home gym, I want to say we still have a high school lifting program PDF that has some body weight stuff in there. You might have to search for like COVID workout. I can't remember. I feel like we did something like that in COVID.
Because I would be actually curious to maybe we can get this for next Monday. Answer from our strength trainers of like, is it better to go to the CrossFit gym or just to do body weight stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And get into these positions, do the RDLs, do the stuff like that, so like we can make these athletes better, more explosive rotational athletes. Yeah. Is there actually more meat on the bone if we have them at home just doing body weight stuff as opposed to like going to a CrossFit gym? I'd be curious.
I'm going to send him Slack to Whitey right now.
We can bring it back on the pod to discuss.
I know, right? Okay, quickly.
We can just open the door and yell.
Jeb, beside bat speed, what, if any, blast metrics do you pay attention to, and how do you use them? Attack angle. That's my answer. It's bat speed and attack angle.
It's bat speed and attack angle.
Yeah.
I felt like a real dummy a couple weeks ago. One of my kids asked me something about vertical bat angle, and I was wrong. But like,
I also felt dumb.
But it was also like a very real moment of like, I don't really know what that means because I don't pay attention to it because it doesn't really matter.
Bat speed and attack angle.
Bat speed and attack angle. And like once the athlete, if you are past the point where you're looking at bat speed or attack angle, you're probably like training a driveline in a college or pro athlete that can ask your trainer more in-depth questions about hand speed, vertical bat angle, things like that are on there that we don't pay a ton of attention to. Because generally for kids 18 and under, the things that matter most are bat speed and attack angle.
Yes. All right, we're going to finish with a couple good ones from my guy, Evan. A lot of Cubs fans, actually, in the questions.
I see you.
Today.
I see you out there, people.
Yeah, we're out there.
Drive on Chicago. It's coming.
Evan, what is the proper ratio of hip-hop to metal to bro country for a workout playlist? It's 80 to 20 to 0 for me. Bro country, you can miss me with absolutely, literally all of that. I'm so far out on this whole, like, Jessica Simpsonization of country music post, like, 1994 or whatever. Not the biggest country guy to begin with, but what's happening right now, like, I'm so far just completely removed. So
we're like people may not really understand how different human beings we are because like most of the time we agree on things. You know, we work in the same building, we work very close to each other. I'm not like gonna sit here and say I love bro country, but I would switch that with it was hip hop, EDM,
hip hop, metal, and bro country.
Oh, I thought the middle one was like house music or EDM.
Oh, no.
Okay. Look, I love country music. I prefer, like throw on some Jason Isbell and I'll just sit there and listen forever. That's not what I want on in the gym. Like the music I listen to generally is not music that you want to lift to or hit to or anything like that. That all being said, there's one correct option for music. It's Wednesdays. It's White Girl Wednesdays.
Oh gosh.
It's White Girl Wednesdays.
White Girl Wednesday makes me want to shoot myself.
Turn on all of the worst, the trashiest white girl music. Let's get some Katy Perry. Let's get some Taylor Swift.
Oh my Lord.
I don't even know who's singing the songs, and I'm bopping along to them. And like, I do think there's something to be said of kids hating the music they listen to while training is going to make them train better.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. When it comes to country, man, like if it's gonna happen, it's gonna be like some Waylon Jennings. Like I need some real like.
You can't lift to Waylon Jennings though. This is the point.
No,
I love that music, but like if that's on in the gym, I agree with you. We're like, who died? Like this is a terrible, terrible vibe right now that we got going on.
Yeah. So I'm 80-20-0 is my ratio, and that's that 20% is largely just like.
Can I give my actual answer?
Yes.
Just no music.
That's not the worst.
I just want to hear. Really, I just want to hear wood bats. The metal pings do annoy tough. The bejesus out of me. But like, I honestly would rather just hear the metal pings and not have to yell over music.
Yeah.
And also, the question that I get most often, and I don't even think it's close, is can I change the music?
Oh, yeah. Everybody's got an opinion.
And I just don't care. Like, I don't pay attention to the music, so like, change it. What do I... Yeah. The only time I ever pay attention is when I hear something that shouldn't be on. Like, something that's explicit on the song. And it's like, oh, that shouldn't be on in the gym right now. And then I'll go and change it. But like, otherwise, I don't pay attention to whether it's hip-hop or metal or whatever it is. But I get that question so often that I just want to have no music.
Yeah. If you're looking for a resource here... there is the appropriate Rap Tunes playlist on Spotify, produced by your boy. 828 songs, over 24 hours of music at this point. I haven't added to it in a while. I probably need to add some stuff. Anyways, Evan actually has a real good baseball question here. What will it take to move towards a European model of biobanding to keep kids matched up physiologically rather than chronologically, and what impact do you think that would have on attrition? I'll answer the second part first. It would have a massive positive effect on stopping kids from losing the game because you're not asking like a salmon to get into a fight with a great white.
Yeah,
like
no question.
It's just it's not the same thing. I've seen some big salmon out there, but like come on, potato, tomato. What is it going to take? At scale,
how much time you got?
At scale, it's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars, and even before the money, it would take some amount of consensus and unification to the intention of youth sport, specifically in baseball, in this country. We talked a lot about what we're working on with the ABCA Travel and Youth Baseball Committees and the Youth Summit last episode. If you haven't listened to that one, you should give that one a listen because you're going to start to get an understanding of the amount of levers and flywheels that need to be turned in order to get this thing off the ground. And that's just trying to get us towards like a universal pitch count standard. Executing like a biobanding approach to player assessments and placing would require the national governing body of our sport being able to control the behavior of the teams and organizations and event providers within. And that's not going to happen until we get like an actual government ministry of sport. And,
don't hold your breath.
And I'm not holding my breath for that either. So that's going to take some time. Evan also has one last question we can end on. Outside of passing on superior genes, what is the most important way parents can foster kids' athletic development? I think you have to get them involved in activities that are engaging and rewarding for them, and you need those activities to cultivate athletic attributes that are beneficial in the short and long term. I don't know what that is, though. It could be gymnastics, like we talked about before, right? It could be soccer. It could be track. It has to be something, right? The thing that I'm trying to keep coming back to here is that, like, if we're talking about athletic development, we are talking about increasing somebody's capacity to move in an athletic fashion and express athleticism through force output, right? All of those things require the subject to choose the environment that's going to cultivate those attributes, right? And you can only kind of force their hand for so long. Like, if you don't get them to the point where they have some amount of intrinsic motivation to be able to want to be able to do this stuff, then we're all just kind of like flapping our gums for no reason, man. It just doesn't matter. So, I realize that this is coming off as very like nebulous and vague, but I think it really, like, you kind of like gotta choose your own adventure, the thing a little bit.
Yeah, I'll have a slightly more specific answer maybe, and it's probably going to be a relatively hot take. But the best way to foster, repeat the question, the best way to foster their youth baseball development?
Athletic development.
Athletic development? Okay. Be less involved. And I know how difficult that is. Because you want the best thing for your child, and you know what that is, and they don't because their brain isn't developed. But children are weird little creatures. They don't think that you are cool. No matter who you are. Like, I'll use you as an example. You got a pretty cool job.
My job's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah.
I was literally, we were talking about this with my wife this weekend.
For a 15-year-old kid who is obsessed with baseball, kind of the perfect job for his dad to have. Does he think you're cool?
The older that he gets, the less cooler that I become.
Right. 100%, right? And then you're going to hit a point probably right around high school graduation, early college, where that flips back again, and then you're cool again.
Yeah.
But there is that period of probably like, I don't know, you've been through it, I haven't, but my guess is like 11-ish is when it starts to kind of like you're not as cool anymore. And then really when they hit 13, like, God, you're lame. You're so lame. And then it gets worse as they're in early high school. So like the more you want it, the less they're not going to want it because you're not cool. So like that's, I guess, my way of like the best way to foster it is pretend you don't care. They're probably going to care a lot more the less you care. Yeah. The more you care, the less cool they're going to think that thing is. This is from my observations of children over the last couple of years. I think that is the best thing a parent can do to foster their child's development, athletically, baseball-wise, whatever, is to let them drive the bus and try to watch the movie Inception, great movie, Christopher Nolan, try to incept your ideas into their head without, like, forcing your ideas on them. And then, like, they're probably at the end of the day going to make the decision you want them to make, because you've spent time incepting these ideas into their head. But if you like are way too overt about it, you're not cool, man. They're just not going to think that this is cool or of value if all they hear, the only person they hear talk about it is their parent.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Danny and I were literally talking about this on Saturday. I picked him up from his driver's ed lesson, and we had to go pick up some stuff at the grocery store. I can't even remember where we started talking about it. But the joke that he used to tell is that his friends called me Kratos.
Oh, from like God of War?
Yes. Okay. Because I'm bald, big beard, sure. I lift weights a little bit. And I always thought that was just like completely hilarious. Yeah. But I also recognize that like that's just, look, man, we've talked about my issues with, parenting and fatherhood and all this stuff on the pod, like, I couldn't ask for anything more than to have like my son have like a positive association with me like that when he was younger. And that held for a while. And then, 12, 13, 14 starts to come up on you. And then you kind of like, you realize that like your dad's just kind of old, like, and now on the cusp of turning 16, he's very much moved into this realm where like I need correction.
Yeah.
Like there's all these things that he presumes that
you're wrong. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
Because he's a teenager.
Yeah. Yes. He and fully in that era. So
I would say the less is more approach is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, when he was tiny, man, like dad's job was really cool, and I'm not, I'm not naive to the fact that like being able to work in baseball and be his baseball coach and be his dad throughout all those different environments enabled us to spend a lot of time together. I got the same thing with my daughter. Like I had the privilege of being able to parent on a field and off the field, and I'm sure for both of them, I'm not naive to the fact that like baseball at a certain point was probably a conduit for them to be able to spend time with me and spend time as a family, because we would do that thing where we had the t-ball games on like the little half turf field behind Meridian Park Elementary. And then we would like bring a pizza to the field and sit down literally on the field and have dinner after the game. And that was a family thing that we got to do. So to one degree or another, Michelle and I making those choices as parents, like that was our inception, right? Of like planting this idea that like the game is a fun family thing that like, we love each other and we love to be able to do this together. So if I know that like ultimately, yes, there is some amount of genetic ceiling that anybody's going to be able to have, right? Like I'm never going to be able to lift as much as like Hafthor Bjornsson, right? That's just not. I could load myself up to the gills with all the tests in the world and all the growth hormone in the world, and that guy's going to outlift me, man. Yeah. But I also am aware that like if you discard like the 97th and 96th percentile outcome away, that like largely human beings are just adaptable to the stimulus that they are given if they are consistent and diligent enough with it. I think both of those things can be true, right? I don't think Bobby Witt Jr. is ever going to be able to hit balls as hard as Barry Bonds. I doubt. I think there's probably two different ceilings there. Physiologically, very, very, very different human beings, both arrived in the same place because of consistency of stimulus and because they really loved what they were doing. So I think to your point, you have to set the foundation for like the attachment that they have, where like the sport can be a safe thing. And it's a thing that you can both do together, but at a certain point, you do need to pass off the baton, and like they have to choose it for themselves.
Yeah, you have to let them drive this, and your role when they're driving isn't as the guy in the passenger seat who pulls a map out of the glove compartment and is like, "Oh, you should have turned here. No, you missed the turn. There's the exit. You should have exited there." Like, sit in the actual backseat and don't be a backseat driver. Just like enjoy the wrong turns that your child is going to make, and try to give them as much information on why they shouldn't make that wrong turn. And then if they make the wrong turn, there's nothing you can do, because like you're just never going to get your child to listen to you 100% of the time.
Well, and I'll give you a cautionary tale about doing the other thing, right? Like I saw this video that's floating around on Instagram, and it got promoted by a bunch of people, and it was Earl Woods talking about how he used to train Tiger. And he was talking about all this like this like head game psychological stuff he used to do with Tiger, and he was kind of like crowing about it. He was like, "Well, you're never going to be, you're going to be the toughest golf player, and you're going to be the most mentally unflappable." And like, I suppose, you could find a real golf enthusiast that can kind of testify to like whether Tiger landed in that place or not.
Oh, I do think that if he didn't land in that place, man, I don't know how much closer you can land.
Sure, but what was the cost?
Yeah.
What's
the
cost?
Does he have the same relationship to his personal life as he does his golf?
What was the relationship between like Tiger and Earl? Like Marv Marinovich.
I'll take you one step further.
Go.
What's the relationship between Tiger and his son Charlie? Is he doing the exact same thing?
I don't know.
I don't. Now Charlie is definitely like playing amateur high level golf. The kid's a really good golfer.
Yep.
Everything I have seen, that he is not approaching it the same way Earl did. It is very much like the kid is driving the bus by and large, and like once he got good enough, oh yeah, sure, Tiger's going to enter like a pro-am tournament with his own son, but like he's not sitting there forcing him to make hundreds of swings or,
Yep. Yeah, and and Todd and Marv Marinovich are a great example of that. Like that went entirely sideways. Because there wasn't a passing off of the baton.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know, like, I guess this should be kind of apparent, but, like, I don't coach Danny, Like, I don't.
No, I do.
Right. Like, I haven't done that with any degree of consistency since he was 12.
Mm-hmm.
He's fine.
And, I think when he was, like, 13, would have been slightly different. Now he wouldn't listen to you.
No.
Most of... And it's funny because, like, we are close. I have become close with a lot of the dads on the team.
Yeah.
Even though I'm much younger. That's
he's much younger.
Much younger, to be clear. I spend a lot of time with those guys. I love those guys. I think they're all really cool human beings, really good human beings, and like every one of these kids should be like thrilled that these are their parents because they're all really good people. Every one of these kids is embarrassed of their parents. Like that's what it is to be a kid at that age.
It's supposed to be, yeah.
That's what it's supposed to be. And like the more you try to get involved and change that, the harder that the more struggle, in my opinion, you're going to have just in your general relationship with your kid. Because it's always going to be at each other's throats because like they're never going to be doing what you want them to be doing.
Yeah.
And like the less attachment they're going to actually have to the game as opposed to like you just like being there to support them and like letting them fail because that's a part of this and being there for them when they fail and not trying to like make sure that they never fail and not trying to guide and dictate this entire experience for them.
Yeah.
They're going to make some not great decisions.
Yep.
Danny has made decisions of I'm going to go to the football game for social stuff instead of go to practice. You don't love that decision.
I don't love it, but I got to let him make it.
Because what is the alternative? Just yelling at each other over like a thing that is not gonna. Neither of us are gonna agree.
No, it's a lose-lose, man.
It's a lose-lose, and like they're gonna make decisions that fly in the face of what they say their goals are. Yeah. And I think the best thing you could do to foster their athletic development is not continuously let them know that they're not achieving their goals or whatever, and like. Have these conversations with them, but understand that they don't think you're cool and they don't want to listen to you. That's the mode that they're in right now.
Yeah, and sometimes you do have. We've had talks where we had to have some accountability sessions where it's just like, look, you tell me this thing is important, and I see you making this choice, and those two things don't seem in alignment. Like you make it make sense to me, and I will promise you, my wife and I are very particular about when, if ever, we have to have that type of conversation because it's very much you run the risk of basically like you're highlighting someone's what's really just learning, right? Like these kids are learning what it is to be a human, to be an athlete, to go about their lives, to go about their goals. It's like I saw somebody this the other day was posting on Twitter and they were talking about this whole idea of like, oh man, I'm trying to not get too political here, but there's a certain aspect of where we're going lately that like, well, we're going to cut out seed oils, we're going to cut out soda, and we're going to cut out all this other stuff that's presumed to be harmful for us, and we're going to enter into this like this new golden age of health. And I'm not opposed to any of that stuff about, like, obviously we want our society to be as healthy as possible, but it's also not like the levers that you need to turn to be healthy and to be fit are unknown, right? The issue isn't an understanding of what it takes to get there. It's an issue of executing the consistency, right? It's like, it's really easy to find the information. Doing this stuff with diligence is a whole other ballgame, you know? So when you start to talk about like young children and their dreams and desires for trying to make this thing real and play higher level baseball, have a competitive high school career, and then do something beyond that, it's got to be on them. And it's, you can't future-proof the thing. You can't. And the more that you try to control it, the more that it is going to come back around and bite you in the ass. Because ultimately, the direction of these lives that we should be fostering is that they have to be in charge. They have to. And they have to get to a point where they have the autonomy to make a decision and either go, I know that this decision isn't in consideration of my goals and I'm willing to accept those consequences, or I am happy to make this decision, even though it's hard and there's cost, because it's consideration of my goals. Mm-hmm. And you have to accept both of those things. Mm-hmm. You have to.
To end, the new Netflix show with Ted Danson, A Man on the Inside.
Yeah.
It's early in this season, and his grandkids are on a trampoline, and all three of them wind up with there's a trampoline accident. All three of them are on the trampoline. All three of them wind up with a different broken bone.
Right.
And his daughter is on the phone with him and basically is like, what did I do wrong? Like, how am I this bad of a mother that all three of my children broke, bones on the trampoline? And his response was essentially, Occam's razor. Is it more likely that you, a well-adjusted person, and your husband, a well-adjusted person, raised three kids who are awful human beings, or is it more likely that, like, they're stupid teenagers?
Kids are kids.
And it's like, yeah, it's definitely more likely that they're stupid teenagers, and I think too often parents can take these decisions personally.
Yeah.
When a kid decides, I'm going to go to the football game instead of going to baseball practice, it's not just the decision that they made and they're willing to live with those consequences. It is, to some people, an indictment on, like, well, I pay this much for you to go here. Yep. This isn't the way I want you to handle this situation. And that can make it a lot worse when, like, the reality is they're just like a dumb teenager making a dumb decision.
Trying to figure it out.
It's going to happen all the time. And, like, the more we try to fight them on it, the less likely they're going to quit piano when they're in fourth grade.
That's right.
The more likely they're going to quit piano. So, like, to me, that's the best way to foster this is, like, let them have the autonomy here. Let them drive. You're there in the backseat supporting, not pointing out directions or where they missed a turn. And, like, you're going to get to the destination. You might get there. The destination might not be the place you want to get. You might get there way later than you thought because you made a bunch of wrong turns on the way. And there's nothing you could really do.
Yep. I know that it seems strange that, like, you can't control the lives of the people that you actually make, but you can't. And so if that's true, then you just got to pour as much love and support into them as you can and hope that the things that you teach them will lead them to make the better decisions more likely than not. That's all we got. We just solved parenting. Solved parenting, everybody.
And I'm not even a parent.
On that note, he is Jeremy. I am Devin. Happy holidays or happy Thanksgiving. We'll get this one out early for you guys. We'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.